Now, Nicola Sturgeon saying her decision to stand down is not a reaction to short-term pressure, i.e. all the controversy over the trans issue in Scotland, but clearly it does seem to have taken a toll on her politically.
It absolutely has, and the Gender Recognition Act, which she personally, pushed through Holyrood before Christmas, has proved remarkably unpopular in Scotland. By a margin of 2-1, Scots don't support it. So that really has put a lot of pressure on her. The other issue is that some of her closest supporters, those people in her inner circle, Kate Forbes, one of the names which is being repeatedly mentioned as a possible successor, disagreed with the policy in the first place, which put a little bit of pressure on her too. And then, of course, we had that Isla Bryson case, which was very difficult indeed for the Scottish First Minister. Isla Bryson is the male rapist.
Convicted rapist, yeah.
Convicted rapist, double rapist. Was put into a women's prison originally, and then Nicola Sturgeon saw that that didn't make sense. There was a lot of pressure on her to change that decision. He was moved to a male prison, but in subsequent interviews, Nicola Sturgeon refused to say repeatedly whether Isla Bryson was a man or a woman, and that was because she knew that in saying that Isla Bryson was a man, it would undermine her legislation, which would have classified him as a woman. So that really has almost was the nail in the coffin for the First Minister.
Yeah, and only 3% of Scots saying that the whole issue of gender identity was listed in their top 3 political priorities. But clearly independence, a major priority. And some polls suggesting she was perhaps losing ground on that as well. I think the latest was that she had a figure of 45% in terms of looking at independence, which is actually below the 2014 vote level. Yes,
so in Lord Ashcroft's most recent poll, No was leading Yes by 12%, which is the highest we've seen in over 10 years. So that was pretty awkward for the First Minister. She knew that she couldn't just sort of plough on with this.
Because she was going for this de facto.
She was going for the jugular. And if the gender thing was the almost the nail in the coffin, then perhaps the final nail in the coffin was the decision of hers to treat the next election as a de facto referendum. And only 21% of Scots felt that that was a good idea. So with all of the domestic issues going on at home, it was a very unpopular decision to turn a democratic election into a one-issue vote. And, again, we know that the SNP has been an incredibly united, almost unprecedentedly united party for the past couple of decades, and we were beginning to see really serious splits on the question of whether to turn that election into a referendum.
And whether the cult of personality, as some might describe it, was going to win the day. But an interesting reflection here from Alex Salmond, her political guru, if you like, and that is that the movement's been left with no clear strategy for independence. The previously accepted referendum route has been closed, and the de facto referendum stroke election proposal is now best up in the air. So clearly the whole question now as to what happens to independence as a political football.
Exactly, and none of the people who are being reported as possible successors to Nicola Sturgeon supported, or at least openly supported, her policy of pursuing this de facto referendum idea. And, of course, the Supreme Court has closed the option of a legal route to another independence referendum. So where this movement goes now really is up in the air. And the other issue, of course, is that who her successor is anyone's guess, really. We've got a few names doing the rounds now. We've got Kate Forbes seems to be leading the charge.
8% is her poll rating within the party.
69% of Scots don't know who they want to see. Kate Forbes, there are issues with her in that she is a sort of evangelical Christian, quite conservative in her social views, which would take the SNP, obviously, in a very different direction from the way it's been going at the moment. Angus Robertson, I mean, a name that's been around for a while, but perhaps wouldn't have the energy behind him. Stephen Flynn is being talked about. He's a competent performer, but he's in Westminster, so that throws up all sorts... And a newbie too, so that throws up all sorts of issues. So not just the future of independence, but really the future of the whole SNP is hanging in the balance with the resignation of Nicola Sturgeon.